So, this series that we're in right now is so critically important, right? And I asked you a question on social media this week, and the question was this: as you reflect back on your life, what would you say are like 1, 2, 3 of your personal best? Those moments in your life where you look back and you're like, man, I was at my best when I did that. I was at my best when that was happening. I was at my personal best. My finances, my personal disciplines, whatever. I was at my best when that happened or when that was happening. Did you have a chance to reflect on that at all? I mean, have you been able to identify your personal bests over the course of your life? 1, 2, 3 of those moments? I hope so. Because as we talk about this idea of real friends with real benefits, right? The friends with benefits that actually make you a better person, right? I want to make the case that there's no way you can ever experience a personal best without some great people, healthy connections around you. So I've reflected a little bit on a couple of my personal bests. And I would say that mine would be a couple of things. Obviously, the best thing I've ever completed was making a faith commitment to Jesus Christ, game changer. Marrying Mrs. Peterson, game changer. Being dad to 6 girls, game changer. So I'm not necessarily talking about those. I'm talking about accomplishments that you personally have achieved. So for me, I think there would be 2 things. One would be earning my first, my college diploma. So most of you know, I had dropped out of high school when I was 15, and I never really graduated. And so I got a GED through the military, ended up going to college, and when I was in my senior year, a church reached out to us and said, would you be our pastor? And newly married, and we said, yes, let's do that. So we moved. The school was in Cincinnati, Ohio. We moved from Cincinnati, Ohio, down by Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I was a pastor, and I was taking a ridiculously heavy load. Over the final semester was like 22 credit hours. And I passed it, and I graduated with the highest GPA in the class, which in my mind was a personal best, right? But here's the thing. That did not happen alone. Every step along the way, Sherry, my bride, was absolutely walking with me. In fact, at one point, I had to read over 100 pages a day of intense theology. It was brutal. It was boring. I didn't understand half of it. And I was disheartened. I was discouraged. I was like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even be in ministry. Let's just stop all this crap and I'll just go, sell shoes or something. And we sat down, and she created a plan and a template, and you know what? I followed this plan, and she would encourage me, and she would pray for me, and she would, whatever. And together, when I walked down that aisle and I got that diploma, I look back on them like, that was a personal best. That was a lot of work, a lot of discipline over an extended period of time. And the reason I was able to actually accomplish that is because I had somebody that was really close to me that kept pouring into me. That's one of my personal bests. Another personal best was, I've actually done it since I've been here. And this has to do with the world of physical. I've competed in now 3 physique shows. And these people are like, what are physique shows? And I'm like, they're like bodybuilding shows for guys that don't have muscles, right? They're just like skinny guy muscle shows. And my friend Rob Polenick, who's actually happens to be here today, he's the guy that said to me, he's like, you ever think about doing this? I'm like, not at all. And so we talked, and he encouraged me to try it. And so I did. And I remember, man, along the way, like your exercise has got to be on point, your eating's got to be on point. And I literally remember one time, we had friends over, and they were eating pizza, and they were having some adult beverages, and I was in there drinking water and chicken and broccoli and a sweet potato for like the 500th time in a row, not kidding. And I remember actually, like, I began to get emotional, and I walked out of the room and I started to cry a little bit. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm a grown man, I'm a father, I'm a pastor, and I'm like crying over food. I remember calling Rob, and I'm like, man, what is wrong? Am I hormones? What's happening to me, right? And Rob helped to walk me through that process, and I stuck with it. And looking back, that was a personal best in my life, because I realize now I have this capacity to really control myself, to be very disciplined. I can be stronger than my strongest desire. when my body's screaming for candy, I am giving into that desire these days. But when my body's screaming for candy or screaming to break a diet or whatever the case may be, I now know that I have the capacity to say no. But I could not have done that without a friend like Rob. And quite frankly, Sherry played a huge role in that process as well. And so as I look back on two really significant personal accomplishments in my life, I realize this: I never could have done those things had I not had someone or someone's walking alongside of me. And so over the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at this quote from Dr. Henry Cloud, and he says this, and I want to bring it up on the screen again. He says, look, you really can't get sustained high performance without deep, connected relationships. You can't have high performance for an extended period of time if you don't have deep, connected relationships. In other words, if you don't have a group of friends around you who are encouraging you and breathing into you and holding you accountable and praying for you and lifting you up, you're never going to be the man that God wants you to be, and you'll never be the lady that God wants you to be. You've got to have these kinds of connections in your life. I've showed you this chart every week. I'm going to show it to you again today. Dr. Cloud, in his teaching, he talks about the four corners of connection. And so I made a fine chart based on his teaching. I'm sure he'd like to add it to his second edition of his book, I'm sure, right? He basically says, hey, look, corner one, these are people who basically are connected to no one, right? They're isolated, they're disconnected, they're alone, they're disheartened. Corner two is, like, you are connected to people, but most of the inputs you're getting there are negative, and they're disheartening, they're discouraging. They're things like, you should have, or you won't be able to, or why'd you quit, or rah, rah, rah. They're not very encouraging. Corner three, these are people that have connections, but they're largely all about fun and laughter and ha-ha. And as soon as you start to get substantive, as soon as you start to hold them accountable in corner three, those people are like, whoa, 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 whoa. Back up, buddy. And they usually will run to corner one. Corner three is all about a good time, all about fun, but there's not a lot of tolerance for serious conversation, for substantive conversation. You try having those conversations in corner three, and those folks will bail on you. But he says corner four, and we've been talking about this. This is where we ultimately want to live, in corner four. And I hope this is a word that you'll incorporate in your vocabulary. When people are living in corner four, their relationships, their friendships have energy. There's accountability. There's dreaming. There's conversations they're tough, but they're safe and they're loving. Like, I remember one time when I called Rob, I'm like, dude, I was trying to gain weight in this process, right? Trying to make my add muscle, and I'm like, dude, I can't eat anymore. I'm like, I can't. He had me on this diet where I was eating and eating and eating, and I was eating 7 meals a day, right? And I went from 190 pounds to 215 pounds, but just eating 7 meals a day. And I just called him. I was almost in tears. Keep in mind, at this point, I'm a 41-year-old man, right? I'm like, Rob, I don't want to do this anymore, dude. This is so. Do I have to do this? And this was his response to me. Do you want to get bigger? It's like, well, yeah. He's like, then be quiet and just eat the food. And that's how they said it. Do you want to get bigger? Yes. Then be quiet and eat the food. And that was one of those conversations that was hard to hear. It didn't feel incredibly gracious at the moment, but it was true and I needed to hear it. And all I'm saying is those kind of conversations happen in corner number four. And if you don't have somebody in your life that's willing to say that kind of thing to you, let me say this. If you are not willing to hear someone speak hard truth to you, you're not ever going to experience all of the goodness that God has carved out for you. So I've asked you this question every week so far, but it's an important one to answer. Which corner would you say that you live in? Which corner would you say that you spend most of your time in? Is it corner one, kind of isolated, kind of by yourself, not a lot of inputs, disheartened, discouraged, sad? Is it corner two, where most of the voices speaking into your life are negative and critical and harsh and demeaning? Is it corner three, where you may have a lot of friends, but most of the input is shallow and superficial and it doesn't really take you to the next level? Or are you living in corner 4, which is a place where you're laughing and you're having a good time, but there's confrontation sometimes. You have people in your life holding you accountable. You have people to whom you're speaking tough things. Are you living in corner 4? So that's the question. So, the truth is, we know this. You cannot do something significant, you cannot have a personal best and do it for an extended period of time without good people around you. But these kinds of things don't happen accidentally. Like, you don't just one day wake up in corner 4. It's something that you've worked to develop. It's something that you've worked to nurture. And so there's a cost. There's a big cost to living in corner 4, to developing friendships that will help you live in corner 4. So last week, we looked at something that Jesus taught us. It's in one of his biographies written by a man named John. It's in our Bible known as the Gospel of John. And we looked at 3 obstacles to these kinds of friendships, corner 4 friendships. And if you missed that teaching, it's on the website, church180.tv. We posted it on our Facebook this week. And I encourage you to go back and listen to the teaching about the obstacles to these kinds of friendships. And what I want to do today is I want to go back to John 15, where we were at last week, and I'll look at it, and I want to talk a little bit about the cost, what it's going to take to move into corner 4 friendships, corner 4 relationships, which are the relationships which will help you maximize the thing that God has called you to be. So Jesus is talking with his friends, right? He's talking with a handful of his closest friends. And he said to them, look, if you will stay connected to me, John chapter 15, if you'll stay connected to me, if you'll stay close to me, you're going to be fruitful. You're going to bear fruit. And to them, that was a pretty significant thing, right? To bear fruit, a tree that has lots of fruit versus a tree that has no fruit, which one would you rather have in your backyard? Right? You'd rather have the one that has the big peaches on it, right? Rather than the one that has nothing on it, just a dead stick, right? We don't want that. Jesus said, you stay connected to me, you stay close to me, you believe in me, you follow my teaching, you will be fruitful, right? So this is a good thing. And then he said this. He said, look, let me tell you how to do this. He says this, John chapter 15. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You're my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide to his slaves. Now you're my friends since I've told you everything the Father has told me. So, look at these verses. Jesus basically says there's 3 things in here that if you're going to have those corner 4 kinds of relationships with myself, Jesus speaking, and with others, there's 3 things that we've got to be focused on. Here's what they are. Sacrifice, submission, no secrets. If you're going to have those corner 4 friendships where there's energy and excitement, where there's accountability, where tough conversations can be had, where there's the pursuit of dreams and truth is told, you're going to have to do these 3 things. Sacrifice, submission, no secrets. So I'll be honest with you. I look at these 3 words, and this does not look like a lazy Sunday afternoon to me, does it you? So here's, for me, Sunday afternoon, this is what I'm going to do. I love being in this room on Sunday mornings. I love singing with you. I love learning about Jesus with you. I love shaking hands and hugging. When I go home, we have this thing where we eat lunch and the girls go upstairs and Dad watches a man movie, right? That's just what's going to happen. I'm just going to hang out on the couch and go watch fast cars and explosions and somebody's probably going to get hit. That's what happens on Sunday. I'm just going to completely chill, right? But the truth is, that kind of attitude will never build these kinds of friendships. There's a place, obviously, for that kind of rest. But Jesus is going to teach us something, and that is this. Corner 4 friendships require a huge effort. So before I dig into this a little bit, let me just tell you 2 quick things. Real corner 4 friendships will make you better. And that will sound a lot like hammers banging. Here's what I mean. You ever watch any of those home remodeling shows? You ever see this? Like some of you have seen them on purpose, others of you have seen them by accident, but most of us have seen those home remodeling shows. So they go in, they see this house, they're like, this has potential. And the first thing they do is they start tearing things out. They get their hammers and they bust through drywall and they break down old 2x4s and they tear out. There's a lot of deconstruction happening. And what I realize is that our healthy friendships look like that. If you're going to have healthy corner four friendships, there's going to be some deconstruction that takes place in your life. God will send someone into your life who loves you enough to tell you what is true. Hey, those cabinets look like crap. Right? They're going to love you enough to say what is true. My prayer is that you'll be man enough, you'll be woman enough to stand and receive those words without running to corner one. Corner four friendships make you better, but it takes a lot of work. And it can hurt sometimes, but the end result will always be something better. So hang in there. If you're in a friendship right now where you're starting to hear some hard truth, don't run away. Stay engaged. Listen up. The second thing is about real corner four friendships. Let me tell you this. These are friends who have the ability to Sabbath with you or to rest with you. To just sometimes just settle in and laugh and have a good time and have a party. Like these corner four friends can do that, but not forever. If the only thing you do with your friends is laugh and party and have a good time, let me just suggest to you that they might actually be corner three friends. If you don't have people in your life who are speaking and dreaming and holding you accountable and you're holding them accountable, you may not have corner four friends. Corner four friends will rest with you, but not forever. At some point, they're going to want to get to work on getting better. Make sense? All right. Everybody good? Yes. All right. So here's what Jesus said. The real cost, here's what it takes. The real cost of corner four friendships. I want to really dig into the first component. He said, look, there's no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. This is the biggest act of love. The biggest act of friendship is if you're willing to die for me. But fortunately, there are some other acts of sacrifice that happen before that, okay? Let me just tell you two acts of sacrifice that corner four friendship requires. Number one, it's a big one. Time. So, don't raise your hand on this, but is there anyone in this room that thinks to themselves frequently, what am I going to do with all this spare time? Like, what am I going to do with all this extra time that I have? So, my guess is there are not a lot of people in this room saying that. How about this? Is there anyone in this room that says or feels, man, I could use a couple more hours. I need a little bit more time. I would guess that most of us say that more, right? Truth is, like, time is valuable and it's limited, right? And we often, it feels like we just don't have enough to get everything done. But I'm going to tell you, to build real friends with real benefits, corner four friends, you are going to have to make time. So in preparation for this series, I was listening to a series of sermons preached by a preacher back in 1985. And as he was talking about this subject, he said one of the biggest obstacles to healthy friendships was time. Now, in 1985, I didn't even know about time, right? Like 1985, I don't know, I was 10 years old. So when I was 10, I was just like, time. Like, whatever, you just, don't think about time. But apparently, back in 1985, time was an issue for people when it came to building and nurturing healthy friendships. Now, here's something interesting. I read through the scriptures, and about 2,000 years ago, St. Paul writes this letter to the people in the city of Ephesus, and then he says this. He says, look, here's what I want you to do. I want you to be careful how you live. Don't live like fools. Live like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. In other words, manage your time well. And then, here's what's really cool. If you would keep reading on in the sentences afterwards, St. Paul says, look, don't be a fool with your time, manage it well. And then he immediately goes into talking about building healthy corner four friendships. And so I'm reading this, and all of a sudden it occurs to me that building friends has required time. In St. Paul's day, 2,000 years ago, it takes time in 1985. It takes time today. Time has always been a sacrifice necessary to building healthy corner floor friendships. Let me just throw this out there. Two things. So I hear this a lot and have said it a lot when it comes to like really substantive healthy friendships. It goes like this. I just don't have time to invest in and nurture that kind of a friendship. So let me dig into your business a little bit. How much time do you spend on social media? How much time do you spend watching Netflix? How much time do you spend at your hobby? How much time do you spend at work? See, think about that and then ask yourself this question. How much time do I spend investing into my friendships? The people who will ultimately make me better. The point is this, really. The time is not so much the issue as how we manage our time, right? And let me just say this. We learned this a couple weeks ago, that if you are the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time, then you and I should be really mindful of who they are and make sure that we're spending every opportunity. It will be a sacrifice, but make sure that we're spending every opportunity we have building up those friendships that will help us to become everything that God is calling us to be. So that's this matter of I don't have time. I just want to throw out to you that we probably do have time. It's just we've decided to place it in other areas. I just want to fight for this idea that investing in healthy, godly, corner floor friendships is one of the best ways you can invest your time. Is it a sacrifice? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Well, if you are the average of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time, I would say it is worth it. Spending time with godly, healthy people who take you to the next level. The second thing I want to address a lot. You've heard it, and maybe you've said it. I have as well. Talk about friends in your life who are just low maintenance. You know any of those folks? It's low maintenance. Like, yeah. Don't require a lot. You go for months without talking, and then you see them, and it's just like we just pick up where we left off, and it's just I don't appreciate those people sometimes. But here's what I realize as I reflect on this, that friendships that require nothing don't make me better. I found that the friendships that make me better, the friendships that God uses to call me to the next level, the friendships that God uses, that people who will put a finger in my chest or who will confront me or ask pointed questions, those kinds of friendships cost something. They take some time. They take some energy. Friendships that require nothing usually don't make you better. No. The truth is this. It just takes time to build relationships, friendships that will build you. It just takes time. And that's sacrifice. Jesus says, look, ultimately the ultimate sacrifice is death. But a secondary sacrifice would include time. Just giving time to building up healthy, godly, biblical corner floor friendships. Another sacrifice involved in building corner floor friendships is this. Emotional energy. Now, let me just show you what Scripture's saying, and then I'll kind of flesh this out. Hebrews chapter 10. It's this. Let us read this with me, please. Think of ways to motivate one another. So let's stop for a second. That means I'm your friend. I'm one of your corner floor friends, and I'm in a slump. Or I've got a bad attitude, and it's kind of becoming obnoxious and obvious to everyone. You know what Hebrews says? You ought to, say that with me again. Think of ways to motivate one another. That takes a little bit of energy, doesn't it? It means that all of a sudden you're going to stop your busy life and you're going to think about, how can I motivate Paul to get out of this funk that he's in? It's a little bit of a sacrifice. I mean, you could be, watching The Walking Dead on Netflix or something, Now you got to think about me. He goes on, he says, let's think about ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. So if you're my friend and you're in a slump and you're hiding out at your house and you're not engaging and your spiritual thermometer is going, you're going down, you're getting cold, I can see you're in a slump. My job as your corner for a friend is to think of ways to motivate you to get out, right? To do some acts of love and some good work. And that takes energy. He said, let's not neglect our meeting together. Listen, a lot of people say, well, that means that we should meet together every Sunday. Well, it could certainly mean that, but I would say it probably means more than that. If we're good corner four friends and we're really building one another up and we're encouraging one another up, you know what it means, gang? It means we're going to take time to sit across the table from one another and get into each other's business. And that's where the best growth happens, isn't it? He said, don't ignore meeting together. Pay attention to that, as some people do, right? But encourage one another, especially now that the day of the Lord's return is drawing near. And here's the truth. This requires an output of energy. This requires some thought and some energy, really. Motivating someone means that you've identified the fact that they're in a slump. And you've got to call them out. You got to help them put together a plan, and that takes energy. Have you had a difficult conversation recently where you're on the way to say some tough things to a person? Does that feel good? I've been in those moments where I've been on a way to say some tough things to an individual or individuals, and on the way there I'm like, oh man, it would just be awesome if just snowed right now. Right? You just turn around because the Starbucks is going to be closed and they won't be there, right? It's hard to do that. But that's what's required. It's a sacrifice required to build those healthy corner four friendships. So that's one side of the emotional energy that's required, right? And then St. James says this. Just read that with me, would you? Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Hey, here's a question. When's the last time you sat down with a friend and confessed your shortcomings, your sin, your addiction, a habit, a bad... Don't answer out loud. When's the last time that happened? When's the last time you sat with a friend and you prayed together? Gang, I'm just going to tell you, if we're not doing this stuff, we don't get better. We don't maximize the things that God has carved out for us, the blessings that God has for us, the giftings that God has for us. We don't maximize it if we're trying to do it by ourselves without a corner four friend. And corner four friends require sacrifice, which includes time and emotional energy. Now, emotional energy is substantial. I have to think about how to motivate you. And I have to confess my sins to you. And you have to think about how to motivate me. And you have to confess your sins to me. It can get pretty doggone intense, can't it? So I'm reflecting on this. I'm listening to a sermon, same sermon from 1985, where this pastor talked about developing godly brotherhood, godly sisterhood, godly friendships, and he says this. Look at this. This is big. Brotherhood requires sharing the drama of another brother's life. That means if I'm your corner four friend or you're my corner four friend, sometimes I'm just going to be all up in your business, and sometimes you're going to be all up in my business, and that requires a lot of emotional energy. Listen to this. Life is simpler when you don't have to carry another person's burden. But it is not better. It would be so much easier if I could just live my life without having to carry other people's burdens. It would be easier if I could just live my life without having to carry and deal with and pray for and think about other people's stuff, without having to take the energy to motivate other people. But it would not be better. The best life is when we are involved with one another at a level where it actually begins to cost us, where sacrifice is required. The cost of real corner four friendship is high. It requires time. It requires emotional energy. And these are precious commodities. But they are wisely invested in real corner four friendships. Now, Jesus talked about the cost of submission and complete honesty. And lest you become discouraged, I'm not going to spend as much time on those two as I just spent on the matter of sacrifice. You all right? Yep. Yo. Everybody good? Yeah. All right, good. Jesus said, look, when it comes to this matter of friendships that really make a difference, submission and complete honesty are, I think the two are synonymous. St. Paul said, look, we ought to submit to one another. And I think really that means this. I'm willing to give you access to my life. No secrets. No impenetrable defenses. You can ask questions. You can look around. You can offer critiques. I don't give that access to everyone, but I do give it to a few. And that's where the real good stuff is found. And it takes a lot of work. Now, when I say that kind of stuff, when I talk about no secrets, when I talk about giving someone complete access to your life, some of you may be like, I don't know about that. Right? You may get a little bit of resistance going on. So, a while ago, I read a book called Do the Work by a guy named Stephen Pressfield. And he said something that's spot on for this conversation. Look what he said. He said, the more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more, say it, we will feel towards pursuing it. The more important something is that we do, the more resistance we'll feel towards pursuing it. Really, he's saying the greater the resistance, the more important the work. I'm just going to tell you guys, real corner four friendships are essential for spiritual growth. And they're essential for any other kind of growth that you're looking for in your life. And the resistance that you might feel is absolutely normal, but I would argue that it's also an indicator of the importance of building these kinds of friendships. Corner four friendships are very costly. They require sacrifice. They require submission. They require total honesty. They're not cheap. I like to say it like this. Look, you don't get corner four at the dollar store. You don't get corner four at the dollar store. Now here's what I mean by that. Fast and low cost, or fast and cheap, usually doesn't equal quality. Right? If I want fast and cheap, I can drive through and grab a burger at McDonald's and a milkshake, right? Fast and cheap. But if you continually eat fast and cheap, it won't be long until your doctor's going to look at you and say, hey, we got to talk about your diet, right? Fast and cheap doesn't work on a diet. How about this? Fast and cheap. You ever buy furniture at Walmart? I have. It's fast and cheap. I get it home, I put it together, and it's great until one of the kids sits on it. You know, I know you're not supposed to sit on bookshelves, but sometimes kids do those kind of silly things, right? Yep. And it's fast and cheap. But it can't handle the weight of a kid. Fast and cheap. How about this? Picture frames. This is unfortunately a real illustration. I saw a bunch of picture frames at Family Dollar. They're only $1 a piece. I'm like, that's amazing! So I got a bunch of them. I put pictures in them. I hung them up on the wall. And one day I'm sitting on my couch and I look and my picture's sitting there all of a sudden. Like it just, the picture frame just fell apart. Right? Fast and cheap. I want to tell you something. If the friendships in your life are fast and cheap, if they're made quickly like that and they require nothing from you, you probably don't have corner four friendships. And without corner four friendships, you are not going to ever experience the big, full life that God is calling you to experience. If you want corner 4 friendships, there is going to be a cost. The thought of that cost will absolutely generate some internal resistance, but let me just tell you, the return on investment is absolutely worth it. So how do you get these corner 4 friendships? How do you nurture them? I'm going to give you 3 words. I'm not going to say a lot about them because it's getting close to time. All right? Let me just give you 3 words. How do you begin to nurture corner 4 friendships? Here they are. 3 words. Say it with me. Pray, play, say. It's really this easy. You want corner 4 friendships? Friendships that will actually take you to the next level. Friendships with people that you can travel to the next level in your life with. Here's how you do it. Pray. You begin by having a conversation with God that goes like this. God, I really do need some men in my life, or I need some women in my life with whom I can travel to the next level. I need some people in my life that I can begin to put a plan together that will help me grow spiritually. I need some people in my life that will help me to put a plan together that will help me get out of debt. I need some people in my life that will help me put a plan together to be a better husband, to be a better worker. I need some people in my life that will put together a plan that will help me get my body back where it's supposed to be. I need some people in my life that will help me put a plan together that will help me quit being addicted to pornography. I mean, we can just go on and on. I need some people in my life who will be those kind of friends. God, please help me find those kinds of friends. Pray. Play. Hey, here's the truth. You'll make the easiest friendships in a place where you're naturally enjoying yourself and being yourself. Right? So, if you're looking to develop healthy friendships, begin saying, where is the place I'm most likely to meet people who want to go on the same journey as I do? Right? So if you're interested in getting your life together spiritually, a good place to start looking might be a church. If you're interested in losing weight and building up some strength, a good place to start looking for some of those kind of friendships might be a... If you're interested in getting your finances together and getting out of debt, a good place to start looking for those kinds of friends to take a journey with might be Financial Peace University. If you're interested in eating lots of donuts and getting fat, a good place to be... I'm just kidding. I'm just getting hungry. That's what's going on there. I'm just saying, look, if you're interested in taking your life to the next level, go to the place where it's most likely you're going to find those kinds of people, right? Play, have some fun, go there, right? Final thing. Pray, play, say. At some point, you've got to step out of your comfort zone and say, hey, man, you want to get some coffee? Hey, man, would you be willing to help me put a plan together that would take it to the next level? Maybe even travel with me, right? Those 3 things, you begin to wrap your mind around those, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in your life. God ultimately will do His best work, not by yourself, but in a small community of corner 4 friendships. So here's what I want to do today. I want to close out. I want to pray for us that God will bring us into those kind of connections, corner 4 friendships, where you grow and they grow and we grow to become all that God wants us to be. Can we do that, Father?